Hey guys, and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about some of the better value bets in college basketball for November 15, 2016. This is kind of a more unique day because it's the 24 hours of college basketball, so there are some games that are on rather early in the morning. So for those that are interested in those particular games, I'm kind of making the cutoff at the 4 o'clock game, which is the Hawaii game. That's going to be the cutoff line for this video, so the midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning games are on yesterday's video, the November 14th video. So this is going to be the November 15th video. And I have a list of about 16 games that I'm going to touch on as some of the better potentially value bets in college basketball today. And unfortunately, they're not listed in terms of start time on here. So if you're interested in what specific games I'm going to be talking about, I'll have those in a list in the description of this video. And again, if you want any more content beyond what I just talked about in this video, you can head over to stumpthespread.com and get our daily free picks there, or register to become a premium member. And if you're interested in that, you can click on this Stump the Spread icon right here. If you're on desktop, it'll take you right over there. And I'll also link the website in the description of this video. And for all the people that have been clicking the subscribe button or thumbs upping the video, that's really appreciated and helpful. If you want, you can subscribe and get notifications of when I release these daily college basketball pick videos. So I got about 16 games here. I'm going to try to go through these a little bit quicker than maybe some of my other videos, just so this doesn't drag on too long. So I'm going to start with Dayton against Alabama. This is a Dayton squad that returns a healthy portion of their veteran experience and talent from last year's squad that found a lot of success. And then you have an Alabama squad that is in the rebuild process under head coach Avery Johnson, but Alabama does have a great head coach, and it really legitimizes their basketball program having a guy like that. And this is a team that's probably going to be more of a mid-tier team in the SEC this year. Dayton really dominated, I believe, Alabama in this matchup last year, and that was with Dayton getting it at home. And we do like the veteran experience that this Dayton squad has, which should help them in the road environment. So we are taking them getting the 1 point here as a pretty solid value bet. Moving on to Oregon versus Baylor. Oregon's a popular pick to potentially win the Pac-12 this year. Dylan Brooks being out obviously hurts Oregon, but this is a Duck squad that has at least a little bit of depth that they can kind of fill in that gap while Brooks is out. This is an Oregon team that kind of flew under the radar for a little bit last year and kind of came onto the scene a little bit in the NCAA tournament, making a run to the Elite Eight. This is a group that can definitely replicate those kind of results this year. And Oregon looked pretty dominant in their home opener against Army. And then we have a Baylor squad that moves on a couple of their best players from last year, Prince and Gathers. That kind of weakens them a bit in the post. They're not quite as the same threat that they were. But this is still a team that returns enough pieces that they should be a factor, at least in the middle tier of the Big 12 this year. And actually, Baylor finished last year right about in the middle of the Big 12. So if they're able to do that, that'd be pretty impressive for them. But in this particular matchup, in this afternoon game, we like where this Oregon squad is a little bit better. And they should just be a little bit more cohesive at this part of the year, given the fact that, this is a Baylor squad that's losing two of their best players from last year. So it's somewhat of a rebuild/reload for Baylor, but we will be siding with the Ducks here as the better value bet. All right, now to talk about Maryland and Georgetown. Maryland loses almost everyone from last year's team, other than Melo Trimble, who's really going to be leaned on heavily to perform at a high level to keep Maryland relevant in the Big Ten. We do think that Maryland's going to take quite a significant step back this year as a result. And then you have a Georgetown squad that didn't really play up to expectations a year ago, and although they do lose their best scorer in Smith Rivera moving on, this is still a team that returns 4 other starters and brings in some pieces that should really infuse some talent and depth into this squad. And we do like Georgetown to have a bounce back year as a program, as they do push for a spot in the NCAA tournament. And we do like Georgetown here giving the points as the better value bet, especially with Maryland not looking all that confident in their respective opener. Had a hard time putting that game away against a manageable opponent. We just need to see more out of this Maryland squad before we have a lot of confidence in what they're able to do this year, just given the amount of talent that's moved on from their team. Okay, moving down, the next game I want to talk about is Long Beach against North Carolina. So we like this Long Beach team coming into the year, given the amount of transfer talent that's been infused into this roster. This is a Long Beach team that's one of the favorites to win their conference and make the NCAA tournament en route of the automatic bid. But watching the Long Beach versus Wichita State game the other day, I just was not impressed with what we saw. The 49ers, they showed almost no fight, and as Wichita State just went on to cruise past the 49ers. And, you know, Wichita State's going to be good this year, but that's not the same caliber of Shockers team that we've seen in recent years. They've lost a lot of veteran pieces, so we thought Long Beach was going to have a decent shot at actually competing with Wichita State, but that just simply wasn't the case. And now Long Beach gets an even tougher matchup here, going back-to-back on the road and now taking on a North Carolina team that looked very impressive in their last outing at home against a strong veteran Chattanooga squad. So North Carolina looked really impressive in their last outing. Long Beach State really disappointed, and just continuing on with that trend, we like North Carolina here, giving the points as the better bet. And Indiana against Ball State. Indiana competed hard on the road in their opener against Northern Illinois, which is another MAC team. Northern Illinois should compete in the mid to upper tier of the MAC this year. Indiana State gave them a run. This is an Indiana State squad that was a mid-tier Missouri Valley squad a year ago, and they do lose two of their top performers from last year's squad, so we wouldn't be surprised if Indiana State took a step back this year, just given the fact that that's going to be production that's hard to replace. And then we have this Ball State squad who we really like coming into the year. This is a team that we think has a decent shot at winning the MAC West and even getting out of the MAC and getting the automatic bid into the NCAA tournament. We really liked Ball State in their opener on the road against St. Louis, and they went on to crush the Billikens in that one in what was a pretty impressive result. So we're going to continue to side with Ball State here as they go on to win and cover this moderate spread on their home court. Youngstown State and Toledo. In Youngstown State's opener, we actually really liked Akron to get the win and cover in that particular matchup, just given the fact that Akron returned just a ton of experience and talent to a group that's expected to win the MAC this year. But to our surprise, Youngstown State looked really impressive in that matchup, especially on the offensive side of the ball. This is a group that once they get things rolling offensively, they prove that they can be really tough to stop even for a veteran experienced group like the Zips. That speaks really well to the potential this Youngstown State squad has, and we do think that they can probably finish a bit higher than where they're currently projected in their league. And then you have Toledo, who went on the road in their opener and competed hard against a rebuilding St. Joe's team. This is the Toledo squad that's expected to finish kind of in the middle of the MAC this year, so not nearly the kind of threat that Akron posed to Youngstown State in their opener. And if the Penguins were able to, kind of convincingly get past Akron in their opener, we do think that they have a pretty decent shot at keeping things competitive here, even on the road against Toledo. So we really like Youngstown State here getting the points as the better value bet. This is one of the more intriguing games of the day. We have Wisconsin against Creighton. This is a Wisconsin team that really built a lot of momentum down the stretch last year and in the Big Ten after having not such great results in the non-conference. This is a Wisconsin team that returns pretty much all of the important pieces from last year's tournament team, and the Badgers should be looking at a pretty successful campaign this go-around as a result. And then Creighton, they started in Big East with star Doug McDermott, who's since gone on to the NBA and plays for the Bulls right now. His dad is the head coach over there at Creighton, and it took them a little bit of while to kind of get their traction in the Big East in the post McDermott era player once he left, but it seems like this program is getting back to competing at a high level again. This is a Creighton squad that won 20 games last year, and they returned pretty much all of the important pieces to a group that's expected to be a top 25 team this year. Creighton has one of the best home court advantages in college basketball, and we really liked Creighton getting the 3 points initially. It's gone down to a pick-em. We'd probably hold off on this one, but if we had to take it, we do still think that Creighton has the slight edge here on their home court as the better bet. All right, so here's this is the 4 o'clock in the morning game between FAU and Hawaii. Not a lot of people are going to wake up early to watch this one. These are two teams that aren't expected to do much this year and have really struggled out of the gate. Hawaii, they were a really fun team to watch last year. They were a threat in the NCAA tournament, but this group is in complete rebuild mode with all of their starters from last year's squad moving on, and that's been apparent thus far. Maybe the one or a couple of the factors that are working in Hawaii's favor in this one is the start time, which could affect this Florida Atlantic squad who's come over from the Eastern time zone. It'll be interesting to see how they're affected by that particular start time. And then Hawaii is also getting the home court advantage in this one, but not the most intriguing matchup by any means. But based on what we've seen out of these two teams thus far, this should probably be a more competitive matchup as a result of the failures of these teams. So we'll take FAU with the points as the slightly better bet here, but probably be holding off on this particular matchup. Moving on to Michigan State against Kentucky, a little bit more of an interesting matchup. Michigan State, we really liked them in their opener against Arizona, who was going without their best player, Alonzo Trier. But Michigan was not able to come through in that particular matchup as they came up just short, losing to what's a talented Arizona squad, but not necessarily an experienced group. So that was a little bit surprising. Michigan State is bringing in one of the best freshman recruiting classes that Izzo's ever had, but there are also some veteran pieces back on this team like Tum Narin, and this is a group that we expected to kind of infuse some of that young talent into a veteran core that's already there. Also, Eron Harris coming back after what was a disappointing year last year for him, but really a season we expect Harris to kind of step up and take up more responsibility on the offensive side of the ball. But Gavin Schilling going down with an injury really hurts Michigan State in the post. And then you have a Kentucky squad that moved a large significant portion of their roster off to pro basketball this past offseason, but Kentucky, as always, has reloaded with quite a talented group of freshmen. People are obviously selling Michigan State right now, given what we saw with them in their opener, but we'll buy low on this Spartan squad. Now that this has gone from +4 for Michigan State to +7, it just feels like Michigan State's getting bet down a little bit too much. So we expect them to stay somewhat competitive here as they go on to cover this moderate spread against Kentucky on the neutral site. Kansas against Duke, another really intriguing matchup to watch. Kansas came up just short in their opener against Indiana on a neutral site in what was a really fun game to watch. And then you have a Duke squad that's opened the year 2-0, blowing out mid-major teams at home. So Kansas comes into this one a little bit more battle-tested, but Duke is definitely the more dangerous team. They bring in a really talented freshman class to add to a solid veteran core of players, and that's kind of the same situation over at Kansas, but they don't bring back quite the kind of talent that Duke does, and also Duke had the best incoming freshman class in the nation, so the freshmen at Kansas also aren't quite as deep in terms of the talent pool that they bring in. So we do like Duke to come through here and get this win and cover. Especially Kansas wasn't able to get past Indiana in their opener, and they were favored in that one. So little caution in this one for the Jayhawks coming into this one. We'll be siding with Duke as the better value bet. Moving on to another one of these really early morning matchups between two teams that people probably aren't going to be all that excited to wake up in the morning to watch. You have Niagara against Hartford. Niagara has opened the year 0-2, not looking so great, and this is a Niagara squad that's expected to finish in the basement of the MAAC again this year. And then you have a Hartford team that's probably going to be more of a mid-tier team in their respective conference. Hartford also didn't look all that great in their opener, but perhaps getting the home court advantage here for Hartford will be a difference maker with the early start time as well. And in a matchup between two teams, we don't really have that much confidence in either of these squads, but getting the home court advantage we think is going to be a difference maker here for Hartford as they go on to win this one straight up, going down from a slight favorite to a pick'em in this one. Next game I want to talk about is Winthrop against Manhattan. This is a Winthrop team that had a bit of success last year, and they return a number of key pieces to a team that's expected to compete right at the top of the Big South this season. So Winthrop is a team to keep your eye out on. And then you have a Manhattan squad that people are probably familiar with. They have been in the tournament kind of a small handful of times over the past decade or so. This is a team that's usually a threat in the MAAC, but Manhattan wasn't all that impressive last year, going 13-18 overall, and they lose some of their top performers from last year's team, which is a little bit concerning, but this is still a squad that some think should be able to finish at least in the mid tier of their particular conference. But as a result, we do think that Winthrop has a decent shot here to pull off the road win in this early start time. We like Winthrop a lot more coming into the year, and we do feel like they have the better value bet here. Next game I want to talk about is Monmouth versus South Carolina. I was a huge supporter of Monmouth last year just based on what I was seeing out of them early on in the year, and they carried that throughout the entire regular season. It's really a shame that they were unable to represent themselves in the NCAA tournament, because this is a Monmouth team that had more road wins than any team in college basketball last year, and they challenged themselves against Power 5 competition in the non-conference, and just came out with a lot of wins, beating teams like UCLA. They had a win against Georgetown, and just a bunch of other really solid resume building wins for the Hawks. They probably would have gotten into the NCAA tournament if some of those conference wins. I also remember they had one against I believe USC and Notre Dame, but I might not be 100% on those, but it's hard to exactly remember. They just had so many of those impressive non-conference wins last year, but they'll be trying to do the same thing here, going on the road against South Carolina. South Carolina was the last team to be undefeated in college basketball last season, but a lack of resume wins also held them out of the NCAA tournament. These were two of the last teams held out of the Big Dance, and they're both going to be trying to prove themselves coming into this year. We do think that Monmouth has a lot better shot, though, at making an appearance in the NCAA tournament this year, given the fact that they just returned so much talent from last year's team. That was very impressive. And South Carolina does lose some key players in their front court, but they do return what will be one of the better backcourts in the SEC. But in this game, we expect it to be fairly competitive, but we do like Monmouth getting the points in what's a game where people will be watching to see this group as they try to prove themselves on the national stage yet again. Moving on to Siena against George Washington. This is a Siena squad that's had to deal with some fairly significant injuries to key players in recent years, but this team is hoping that they'll be able to keep those guys healthy this year as they go on to compete right at the top of the MAAC with Monmouth, and that's definitely something we expect out of this Siena squad. They picked up a nice win in their opener, and they go on the road here against a George Washington squad that's had quite a bit of success as a basketball program over the last 5 years or so. But this is a team that's probably going to be taking a step back this year, given some of the veteran pieces that have moved on in the offseason. And you can see that the spread has moved down a little bit here. And George Washington didn't look all that impressive in their opening win, which is a little bit concerning. So we do think that Siena getting the points here is the better value bet. All right, I just have a couple more games that I want to touch on. Murray State against Middle Tennessee State. We're not extremely high on Murray State in terms of where this group typically finishes in the OVC. This is a very proud basketball program, but they simply don't have the kind of talent that we typically see out of a Racers team. In their opener, Murray State was able to get the upset win at home against a solid Illinois State squad, and that was a really good win for Murray State, but I watched that entire game, and I really wasn't all that impressed with what I was seeing out of Murray State. They relied heavily on a lot of contested jump shots, and fortunately for the Racers, they got hot when they needed to get back into the game and get the win right at the end. But when you're relying heavily on contested jump shots and things such as that, it's just not going to be a consistent recipe for success. So we'll kind of keep an eye on Murray State, see if they can replicate some of those results. But you can already see that they've fallen from 4.5-point underdogs here to -8, and that's probably just it's also a factor with Middle Tennessee State. This is a group that was able to beat Michigan State in the first round of the NCAA tournament last year, which was one of the more surprising upset defeats. But Middle Tennessee State returns guys like Giddy Potts and Upshaw, who were two of the best players on that team, and as a result, Middle Tennessee State could even potentially make a run at the NCAA tournament this year as an at-large bid if they take care of business in the non-conference and kind of build up their resume a little bit. But we like this a lot better at the opening -4, but even at the -8, I guess we will cautiously be siding with Middle Tennessee State here, and just kind of expecting that Murray State can't continue the kind of crazy shooting that they exhibited in their opening win against Illinois State. All right, last game I want to talk about here is actually I'm going to add this one as well. Belmont versus Vanderbilt. Very interesting matchup in the state of Tennessee. Belmont is well known for making the NCAA tournament, and really they've created something pretty special at their university with their basketball program. But Belmont does lose a few key pieces from last year's team, but they do bring back enough talent to make a run at the NCAA tournament this year. And then you have a Vanderbilt squad that, they made a change at head coach after really underperforming last year. Vanderbilt returns a good amount of talent to at least be competitive in the middle and maybe even upper tier of the SEC if everything goes right for them under new head coach Bryce Drew that's coming over from Valpo. Vanderbilt competed with Marquette in their opener for about a half, and then things really fell apart for this group. But Belmont doesn't bring the same kind of threat to the table that Marquette brought, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Marquette was really just red hot in that opener, and there wasn't a whole lot Vanderbilt was able to do. We think that if Vanderbilt shows the kind of effort and skill that they showed in the first half, at least against Marquette, that they should be able to take care of business here on their home court against what's a pretty decent mid-major Belmont squad. But behind their home court advantage, we do like Vanderbilt to get the job done here with the spread shrinking to 6 points. And then the last game I want to talk about is one of those early morning games again, Longwood versus Stephen F. Austin. We don't expect a whole lot out of Longwood this year. They were very unimpressive in their home opener against Maine, getting blown out in that particular matchup. But now going on the road against a more formidable opponent, this could be a pretty difficult matchup here for the Lancers. Stephen F. Austin everyone in college basketball has really become well accustomed to their basketball program, making the NCAA tournament and really showing some impressive things in the big dance against solid teams. But this is a Stephen F. Austin team that does lose some key pieces from last year, but is still expected to be a major contender in their particular conference. And behind their home court advantage here against a team that we don't have very much confidence in, we do think that Stephen F. Austin giving the points is going to be the slightly better value bet in this matchup. So that does it for the games that I wanted to talk about. I think that was about 17 games or so. And if you're interested in more content beyond just what we talked about in this particular video, again, you can head over to stumpthespread.com to get our daily free plays and also just some of our written content that we have over there. And if you want, you can subscribe to the channel to get notifications of when I release these videos. And if you could thumbs up this video, that's also very appreciated and very helpful, and I couldn't be more thankful for those that have been doing that. So we'll see you in tomorrow's video and hopefully have some more winners for you. So see you then, and good luck with your bets. Bye.